Good evening, everybody, and I've finally decided to take the plunge into Assetto Corsa. And I figured if I'm going to do that, let's do something that you just can't do in many other things, in many other sims rather. So I present to you the 2006, I believe, SuperGT Honda NSX. This is maybe one of my favourite racing cars of all time, and how can you not love it? Just look at it for a moment. Now, if you're not familiar with these cars in this series, chances are you probably are, but you just don't realise it. If you've ever played Gran Turismo, you know these cars. The most famous example of it is probably from the first Gran Turismo, the Castrol Supra. That was a at the time Japanese Grand Touring car. So it's had the championships had a few different incarnations. Well, too, it was the Japanese Grand Touring Championship, and then after the year 2000, Super GT, and it came about after Group C collapsed. You know, when that had its heyday and it sort of collapsed all around the world, and you know, whatever championships came around the world to replace it and fill that void. And this is what happened in Japan. We had these kind of JDM production cars with just these outrageous kits on them. I mean, they get sort of more outrageous the further into the future you get. If you look at the modern ones, they're not unrecognizable, but the aero kits on them are fairly outrageous, and then the further back you go, the more they look like the cars they actually are. Like, I think you can look at this and it still looks like an NSX, which, quite interestingly, like, I don't know, was the NSX even in production in 2006? I actually can't remember. And I think that the Supra went the same way. They were still racing the Supra in this series long after I think it had stopped production, before they switched over to the Lexus. I don't think the Supra's come back yet. It is a multi-class series. I did put a few. Again, I'm recording this backwards. I'm recording the intro after the race, and I did put a few. So they're sort of GT3 cars. I think the rules are slightly different. In Super GT, they're split into two classes: GT500, which is what you're seeing now, and GT300, which are sort of GT3 cars. So speed-wise, they're a little bit weird to place, I guess. They fill a gap between maybe GT3 and LMP1. I could be talking absolute nonsense, but that's where it feels like they fit. And I don't know what it was that sort of made me fall in love with these cars as soon as I saw them. I think it's just a little bit like with the stock cars in Automobilista 2, which I'm also really fond of. Again, another really unique and quite quirky domestic series. They just look like racing cars. You know, when you go back and really think about when you were a kid or whatever, and what you thought about what a racing car should look like, and these things, they look like racing cars. They are just so cool to look at. And it's a really interesting championship. I would again encourage anybody to go and look up old races. You'll see lots of familiar names. A couple of years ago, Jenson Button raced it and won as well in an NSX. You've probably seen the Rayburg NSX, another really iconic livery. It's full of cars you'll probably recognise. I highly recommend you go and watch some of this if you can find sort of season reviews or what have you. It's, you know, it does make it a little bit difficult to search on YouTube, with it being called Super GT. There is, I believe, a moderately successful racing YouTuber by the same name, I believe. Yeah, aren't I funny? Anyway, right, there'll be a race coming up. It was an okay race. We raced at, where are we going? We already have, and we're simultaneously going to Thailand, Buriram. It's a track I've never driven, but a track I know because it's been in bike games, and you're going to hear all this again. I'm not very good at this. But anyway, right, yes, we'll be going to Thailand. Because one thing I did read, interestingly, when I was doing a little bit of history on the subject of Japanese touring cars, was that they couldn't race in more than 2 countries because it would lose its status as a national championship. I didn't realise this. I think that's quite cool, and I think I probably need to go and raise the resolution of the shadows, don't I? So yeah, Content Manager installed, some graphical lovelies turned on, because even with my PC, turning them all on, once you start adding modded cars and textured grass and depth of field and motion blur and pretty textures and weather and loads of anti-aliasing, my PC does not start to struggle, but yeah, we want to keep it above 60 frames a second. So we've got a few things turned on, we've got a few things turned off. But oh lord, like this was the first time I turned Assetto Corsa on in, oh my god, I mean almost probably since it came out. So what are we talking, like 8, 9, 10 years? And I didn't remember it being as ugly as it is. I was like, how badly can it possibly have aged? And I turned it on and it was like, oh good grief, we need to get us some mods. So yeah, Content Manager and what's the weather mod called, Sol, installed. That's quite impressive. I mean, I've been configuring this shit all week so I could record a fucking 5-lap race. So yeah, a lot of effort went into this behind the scenes to get stuff just right, I guess, and I think I've probably talked over a spinning NSX for long enough. Let's go to a racetrack somewhere. So the start here is going to be more difficult than you think. I've copped out and put some tyre blankets on. Alright, easy does it. So in Super GT or GT500 or JGTC, or whatever you would know it as, we'd normally do a rolling start. Which makes the start a little bit easier on cold tyres, because there's no tyre blankets in this class. You can get away with a little lift around that corner. Try and defend this place as much as I can. Still getting used to Assetto Corsa's physics and the cars. And everyone else is steaming off into the distance, and we're going to fight over 12th place by the looks of things. There are some GT300s knocking around as well, a couple of Celica's. Let's see if we can get on back on the Supra. There's a train ahead of us we're starting to catch. This is again a track I've never driven around, but I am familiar with. Comes up in the MotoGP games. And SuperGT do come here for real. At least they used to. Whether they do anymore or not, I'm not sure. Oh, this Nissan is struggling. Alright, we're getting a second wind here. Got the AI aggression on about 60%. And they do like a dive bomb. Ooh, crikey, right. We've got to get past this Supra before we do any more damage to the front of our car. It's all getting a bit like Dodgems at the moment. I think the Supra is the slowest of the three. And just to fill the grid out a bit, I think I've got some Supras in from 2005 and 2006. So there's a bit of a mixed bag of Toyotas. Just to fill out the grid a bit. If you download the 2000 mod, it's got a lot more variety. I'm not sure if by 2006 it would have been the Lexus and not the Supra anyway. The leader is already on the last lap. They are absolutely flying. So they're a difficult car to place. Like, it's difficult to describe what it feels like to drive because I'm not that familiar with Assetto Corsa physics, and I've only ever driven these in one game before, and it was Gran Turismo, which isn't the best barometer for a sim. I think speed-wise, they're somewhere between a production, you know, like a GT3 car, and an LMP1. Like regulations-wise, they're really similar to the DTM cars before they became GT3, if you remember those. So it took me a while to eventually get around to modding Assetto Corsa, but I wouldn't have been able to do this in any other game. So I am forever thankful for that. And we finished. So I've got the cooldown lap on. Which is quite nice. We can have a little bit of a cruise around. See some of the other cars that just blasted up the road. I haven't even mucked around with like setting up pit stops and things yet. Modded tracks I haven't messed around with too much either. Burrow was just one that kind of caught my eye. It's sort of a nice wide modern Grand Prix track, but not one that you see very often. So I wanted something a little bit more unusual to race around. I'll definitely be on the lookout for other cars that race, other tracks rather that these cars raced around, so probably Sugo will be one I'll look for. Which appears in, again, a fair few bike games I've got Sugo in, so there's probably a few others I'm missing. There's a few different versions of Fuji Speedway I've seen. I've got a fairly decent one of Suzuka. There's got to be one out there of Sepang, that would be a cool one too. And I think to end the session, we pull into the pits. Is this the pit lane? I can never remember where it is. This looks like a pit lane. Looking more and more like a pit lane. Oh, here we go. And there we have it, session over. Well, it took me a while to get sold on Assetto Corsa, but I think I'm going to be spending a lot more time with this sim. Precisely because you can't find these cars anywhere to drive. Like, this is the only place I found them. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. Just I love these cars, and hopefully I've done a really nice bit at the start of the video for you to watch where I explained why I love these cars so much, and I'll try not to repeat myself. So yeah, we might be doing more of these videos with these cars, and the probably the older ones as well, because the 2000 ones are really cool. They've got a more varied grid. The cars I don't know if they're faster or slower, but they feel a little bit more lively than these ones. These cars are quite planted. Like, they're not difficult to drive, but they are exciting. So yeah, anyway, I might do more of that stuff. Until then, I guess I hope you enjoyed, or maybe you didn't. That's fine too. See you again soon.